How comes a breakaway Shia sect was able to steal the black stone in the Kaaba and take control of the Haram area when Allah previously destroyed approaching army of birds dropping pellets? Why didn't Allah send pellets on those that mutilated the black stone? Akbar has asked a very interesting question. That's an amazing question. Ifzal has said Mufti is a legend. Wah Ifzal ji, Meri Jaan. Right, may Allah bless you. Ameen, ameen. Right, so this is a very interesting question, people. I want you to pay attention to this. Suratul Fil. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Do you not see how your Lord did with the people of the elephant, which was Abraha, the Abyssinian who'd come over. Now, this thing, why is it that happened there and it didn't happen with the Qaramita? So the Qaramita were a sect, a subsect within the Shia. So you have the Shia, and then within them you've got a subsect of the, I believe non-existent today, but the Qaramita of the Shia. Now there was a time when they attacked Mecca and nicked they stole the black stone. There goes the black stone. It's going off. And they ran away with it, and they kept it for over 2 decades. Billy is in the house. Alright, doing it, Billy, doing it. So the Qaramita kept the black stone for over 2 decades, and eventually some of the Muslims did manage to capture it, but it was broken and smashed, and then they just brought back retrieved pieces of this black stone. Even today, the black stone is just small pieces. It's not actually the actual black stone. So the black thing that you have is not actually the black stone. If you look into it, you're going to see small kind of just pieces of shiny black stone against a greater black setting. The black setting is not the black stone, it's only those pieces in there. So, and you can Google it. Right, now that is, so first of all, about the Qaramita stealing the black stone, that is a fact, that they did steal the black stone, and they kept it for a few decades. A quick point on what is the black stone. The black stone, people, is nothing sacred, okay? We need to understand that, okay? I think it's important. There is no true sanctity to the black stone. The only thing was that the black stone happened to be in the Kaaba, and the Kaaba happened to be the place which is the Qibla for the Muslims, which has then been made as the Qibla for Muslims and is attributed to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So what we do know is that these practices, these rituals were affirmed, as in acknowledged by Islam, and therefore kept alive and validated. There is no, this black stone thing, most likely, okay, so brace yourselves, people, brace yourselves. This is no need to get scared, by the way, when I say this. Right, this is when you say brace, brace. There's going to be some turbulence, some turbulence. So the black stone most likely was part of a pagan god. But it most likely was associated, by association, part of a pagan god culture in pre-Islamic times. So we know that in Petra, the main god, which some argue is Hubal, or what they called, they also refer to him as Dhushara or Dushera. Now, and some have argued he's the same as Baal Shamin, but the point is that the main god that they had was a big black stone. Okay. Now, this black stone that they had as the main god, to represent the main god, was then also replicated later on because remember, Petra is probably where all Arabs kind of centuries before, because this is hundreds of years before Islam. So we're maybe talking, I don't know, maybe 600 years before Islam at this point. These are the people that really set up that kind of form that legacy that other Arabs then start to copy. Okay, they are like from the Arab, they are Arabesque. They're not from, they claim their lineage to be from one of the children of Ismail, but not the one the Arabs come through. So they are like, they used to speak Aramaic, but they used to write in their script is today the Arabic script. That's where they kind of get it from. The Arabs got it from. So Petra, we know that they were like the kind of capital that other Arabs later took from. Now, we know that in the centuries that followed, Petra obviously lost its importance. It was not, in the time of the Prophet, Petra was not an important place at all. But other places were, like Hira, which had taken a lot from Petra, and were the offspring of the Arabs that later ruled Petra, the Tanukhiyin, and then you have the Lakhmiyin. But I don't want to get distracted here. But the point is, many places took a black stone figure as a god. Many of them, including Ta'if, close to Mecca, had a big cube, a black cube, which they addressed as the god Lat, and they would put a cloth over Lat, and it was also a cube kind of object. In some ways a bit similar to, I suppose, presumably maybe the Kaaba, but probably a bit smaller. Now, this kind of figure, and there were probably about 20 different Kaabas that emerged. So the Kaaba in Mecca was not the only Kaaba, okay? But the Kaaba in Mecca is, by our understanding, we claim that legacy belonged to Ibrahim alayhi salam. The other Ka'bat, they were just dedicated to their gods. They weren't dedicated. So the one in Ta'if was dedicated to Lat, and these other ones were dedicated to other gods. They weren't dedicated just to like Allah in that sense. Okay. Whereas the Kaaba is dedicated to Allah, the one in Mecca that we have today. So the black stone, most likely that many of these places had a black stone, which was usually one of their gods. So it's very likely that the black stone was probably a remnant of that over time lost its importance. So like what happened is maybe the Quraysh incorporated it into the corpus of the Kaaba, the body of the Kaaba, and then over time it was just seen as a holy special stone, and it lost that importance as the god. Just as Safa and Marwa were two gods. It was Isaf and Naila. They were two lovers that came and apparently, committed two gods that had sex in front of the Kaaba, and they weren't meant to, and therefore they were turned to stone. And therefore people did the running between them as a form of a kind of expression of their love, I guess. And also a remembrance that you're not meant to do certain things in front of the Kaaba. But over time, that meaning kind of got lost, and then people just stuck with the general ritual. And so what happens is that this is why many of the Ansar from Medina, when they came to Mecca, they refused to do the Safa and Marwa. So Qurtubi and all these people bring it because they said that this was a practice that Quraysh invented and the Arabs invented from Jahiliyyah. It was to do with Naila and Isaf, the goddesses, the god and the goddess. It's nothing to do with Islam. So, and Ibrahim alayhi salam. And so they refused, and this was many of the Sahaba, they said that we won't do the Safa Marwa thing. This is not, this is from pagan practices. But then there's the verse in the Quran saying that, look, but that meaning has gone now. And this is why when I say to people about things like Halloween and Christmas, and people they flare up. Like, oh my God, Halloween. But its original practice hundreds of years ago was to do with witches. And you say, well, but then Safa Marwa most likely was to do with gods and goddesses, pagan gods. It wasn't like, the point is that this, you see, it had lost its practice, and then hence this verse of the Quran that inna Safa wal Marwata min sha'airillah, that now it is deemed a remembrance of Allah. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ بِهِمَا, so who today understands them to be symbolic of a worship to God. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ, this is not from, the term taw'iyan, this is not from taw', that don't understand this to mean voluntary. It's because Safa wal Marwa is not voluntary in neither Umrah nor Hajj. So it's لَيْسَ مَنْ تَطَوَّعَ بِهِمَا كَمَنْ تَنَفَّلَ بِهِمَا لا يعني من تنفل بهما يعني من حسبهما طاعة لله, that whosoever considers them to be a worship for Allah, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ شَاكِرٌ عَلِيمٌ, then indeed Allah is grateful for them, towards them for their worship. Because, so in a similar way, the black stone was most likely was part of a pagan god practice, but in the generation, maybe just before the Prophet and so on, it had lost that importance, but it was still kept as a holy thing. They don't know why it was obviously the pagans probably knew why it was holy, but they generally was just seen revered. So Muslims kept that practice, that, we'll just leave it there in the Kaaba, and they'll use it as a point, so the Prophet would do the Raf al-Yadayn, begin, so when you're doing the tawaf, it's a point to symbolize something. That's all. It has nothing holy or special. It is not a stone from God. It may have been a meteorite. Most of the black stones, by the way, that the Arabs used to use for their gods were black because they were volcanic kind of remnants. That's why. So the black stone may also be a volcanic remnant, or it may be a meteorite. I think it's definitely one of those two. The Saudis unfortunately won't let people conduct any tests on it. It's a shame, but I wish they did, so we could know what it was. So the fact that the Qaramita took it away and broke it and whatever, in all honesty, is no big deal. I mean, it's not a nice thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a nice thing, but it's not something like, oh my God. In fact, Sayyidina Umar said that, I know that you're just a hajar, you're just a stone. لا تنفع ولا تضر. You cannot cause me any harm. You cannot cause me any benefit. This was the statement of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu an. And he said that, yes, but I saw the Prophet out of I saw him kiss you, so I'm just going to do that. Now remember, the Prophet never taught them that the black stone was holy, but out of the Prophet's general upbringing and the Prophet's general practice, that since the stone just now symbolized the house, the Kaaba symbolized Baytullah, and this was a part of it, that practice, the Prophet kissed it, just as a ritual. It was not something done as this is a holy stone. It was not a holy, and it is not a holy stone. It is just a stone. There is nothing special about it apart from that it's got this history associated with it. Muslims today are obviously crazy over it. They beat the hell out of each other to get to the black stone. Which at some point, I guess, in time was perhaps a pagan god. No, I'm joking. But it's amazing, huh? That people, they beat themselves and they do all this to get to it. But there's no harm in these things, because today, what does it symbolize? It symbolizes a ritual to God. And we as Muslims, we submit with that ritual, and that's fine. That's what it is. That's all it is, a submission. It's not really, you gotta be, this is where these other stories all fall apart. Oh no, that this is what it was, and there was when you go from the Kaaba up, there's going to be the other Kaaba, there's going to be this heaven right above it, there's going to be all these old stories. None of these things are real. I mean, and the problem with all this kind of belief is when you look into the evidence, it's going to all fall apart. And then if you believe so firmly in these little folk tales, your iman might collapse. It might not. I mean, because once you realize, well, actually, this is just all stories. So this is why I feel it's better to go with the truth. Seek the truth, people, and the truth shall set you free. Allah, Allah, Allah. So, so that I hope that answers. Somebody said the story about Hajar alayhi salam and Ismail going between the seven times between what is it, Safa and Marwa. In all honesty, I think that's made up. It's very difficult. Come on, like, we have to be reasonable here. That what it seems is that later on, when Islam spread to the other Arab kingdoms in the Middle East, some of the Muslims, in order to show the Arabs that we are one and to have a familial bond with them, they overemphasize the link of Abraham alayhi salam, because all Arabs claim descent from Abraham. So obviously, if I'm approaching, let's say I'm approaching an Indian non-Muslim. Let's say I'm approaching an Indian non-Muslim now, and I want to speak about a message, but I want to build a good bond with them. So I suppose I may speak in Urdu or Hindi. Same thing. I mean, because you're showing some similarity. You're showing that we're not that different. You know, we've got similar roots. We've got similar. So it's at that time that when Islam spread into what was the Ghassani kingdom, the Christian kingdom of the Arabs, in parts of Sham today, which would have been Damascus, Jordan, Lebanon, the Levant, Palestine. All this was pretty much under the Ghassani kingdom. And on the east side was the Lakhmi kingdom, Hira and all these other places. Now, when the Arabs went there, they obviously stressed that, look, we are one, that you guys believe in Jesus, we're also Arabs, our link is Abraham. And the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he came with this message. And that made the message more palatable to the Arabs at the time, who accepted it. And I think that's when they invented the story of Hajar alayhi salam running for Safa and Marwa, so they could add an Abrahamic link to it. Otherwise, it makes no sense, because yes, it is true that Ismail alayhi salam would have been there, but this thing that, okay, she couldn't find water and she struggled, that sounds reasonable, that she may have struggled because she couldn't find water. But this thing that she ran 7 times looking for water, and what are we doing? We're celebrating that? Is that what we're doing? We're celebrating the struggle of... And how does that link into a remembrance of God? Like, what does that have to do with God? Like, if she ran 7 times, and who said she ran 7 times? And where do you get... Like, how do we know she ran 7 times? Nobody was there. So this point of saying that, oh, well, really what we're commemorating here is a mother's despairing spirits when she couldn't find water and thought her son was going to die. So she ran 7 times, and God really liked that running. That's making God look so evil. That God liked that running so much that he said everybody run like that. Can you imagine that? That we're saying that God said, he said like, yaar, I like this. Chalo sab lag jao. Everybody run over that. Oh God. This is, you see that that doesn't make any sense. So why would God do that? I mean, I get the fact that she would have struggled, but the fact that somebody said it was precisely 7, and then now God loved that so much that he said, everybody run till eternity up and down Safa and Marwa, doesn't make any sense. I mean, this most likely, clearly, it seems like this part was made up. It was, this part was Abrahamicized, if you like. So it was Abrahamicized by the Muslim Arabs that wanted to connect with the other Arabs, and they wanted to show them, why is our Mecca, Kaaba, important? Because to the Christians, why do we care about your Makkah? Oh, because it's of Abraham. And it created that link. Okay, so that's most likely what happened. Cool, people. Right. The Zamzam thing, no, I'm not saying Zamzam might not have... The Ismail alayhi salam, and most likely Zamzam story, I believe most likely is true. I do believe that I believe that's true. Allahu A'lam, but I believe it's true. But the Zamzam story doesn't have to be connected to running 7 times up and down Safa and Marwa. It's just that you've been told that. So remember that it's not like the Zamzam isn't even on Safa and Marwa. So it doesn't even... So this... Because the whole point is, what they're trying to say is these were 2 hills, yeah? 2 hillocks or whatever. And you've got... Ismail alayhi salam is there crying. And so Safa... so Hajar is running up this mountain looking, can't see anyone. Now she's running down up that mountain looking, can't see anyone. Now she's running down up this mountain looking, can't see anyone. And she does this 7 times. But by then Zamzam begins. That's the story. That part, the running and all this, I'm not convinced with. And neither were many Sahaba. Many Sahaba rejected it from Medina. They said this was nothing to do with Abraham. This was made up by the kuffar of Quraysh. And why should we follow it? And even Allah, when speaking in the Quran about Safa wal Marwa, doesn't say it's because of Hajar. He doesn't say, oh yeah, inna Safa wal Marwa min sha'airi Hajar indama, whatever, sa'at ma baynahuma and this and that. Allah doesn't say that. He just says, yes, people use this to remember God today. So whosoever does this as a ritual act of worship, then Allah is grateful. That's all Allah says. The rest, what I'm trying to say is that story seems to be manufactured. The Zamzam thing, most likely, I believe, did happen. That this spring, and that is also mentioned in the Bible as well. About this spring close to Ishmael. So these things already had a precedent and they had a history, but the running thing just doesn't add up. Doesn't add up. That's now a mandatory part of Umrah and Hajj just because Hajar was distressed and she was running up and down that God got so happy with the way she's running. And he said, I'm going to make everyone run like that. That just sounds so sadistic. That just sounds so absurd. What kind of... that's just like... you can imagine the angels going... right, what's going... So... that doesn't sound like, that's not how rituals would be done. So, okay, I hope that sheds some light and makes sense, people. Right, let's take a look at the verse, because I've got to speak about Zaira Wasim as well. Somebody said... I'm just being real, ain't I? I'm not trying to... because the problem is people are so sensitive as well. People are like, oh, very touchy, touchy. And you must remember at all times, Allah addresses the issue of Safa wal Marwa in the Quran. And He does not make any association with Abraham. So there's a big question that it's very unlikely it had anything to do with Ibrahim alayhi salam. Just as Arafah, I'm not sure, I'm still researching into the history of Arafah, where Arafah comes into it, because I don't think that was linked to Ibrahim alayhi salam either. But anyway, that's for a different day. We'll unpack that on a different day. As the poet says, Kal mila waqt to sulja denge teri zulfon ko. That tomorrow, if I get time, I'll untangle your hair. कल मिला वक्त तो सुलझा देंगे तेरी जुल्फों को आज जरा उलझे हैं वक्त को सुलझाने में. That today I'm a bit distracted in untangling time itself. So tomorrow when I have time, I'll look at that amazing hair and untangle it. Today I'm a bit busy. That's what the poet says. Right, so let's take a look at... Right, so there's this hadith. I want to go over this hadith. somebody said, what if the Kaaba black stone special and his followers, the Prophet was chosen to bring back the real rituals of the Kaaba, Safa and Marwa, and black stone? Is that possible? No, because it's not possible, because you have to remember when Ibrahim alayhi salam goes to Mecca, there's nobody there. It's nothing. It's just a valley with, with nothing. So it's not that, oh, they're already there. But yes, there is this understanding that he builds a place for remembrance. إِذْ يَرْفَعُ إِبْرَاهِيمُ الْقَوَاعِدَ مِنَ الْبَيْتِ وَإِسْمَعِيلُ, that him and Ismail build a house for remembrance. Now, that we believe is the Kaaba. Okay, now, the Safa and Marwa isn't mentioned about him, but it is mentioned in the Quran. So this is my point. When Allah mentions it, Allah would have just said that. Because why is Allah mentioned? Because the companions rejected it. Some of the companions from Medina said, we're not going to practice Safa al Marwa. It's from pagan practices. So Allah reveals verses telling you. So you don't need to guess. You can just read the verses. Allah says Safa and Marwa today are symbols for remembering God. So whosoever considers them to be an act of worship, Allah is grateful. There you go. Case closed. Allah could have said, oh, this was from the time of Abraham. He built it and he did this and he did that, but he didn't. So there's no point guessing. That's my point. Right.